welcome back to another video. I fear I had to make a part 2 after the last video because I think some of you liked it. But I've gathered you all here today because we need to continue our research. The research isn't done. We have a mission before us, and that is to continue ranking the Assassin's Creed characters. If you haven't seen part 1, you definitely need to. I'm going to link it somewhere here so that you can go and watch it. But I would say that has some of the most infamous Assassin's Creed men in it. Not all of them, but some of them. So on the last video, there were a couple of comments on people I missed, and I'll be honest, yeah, I did miss them. That is entirely my fault. I can only apologise, but we're going to do them justice today. Once again, some of these men are very questionable, in my personal opinion anyway, and obviously that is what this video is about. We had a very strict, scientific, objective system of ranking and rating these men. So that was personality. You know, what are they like? What do they like to do? What do they think? How do they feel? That kind of thing. Combat ability. How well can they protect me, essentially? That's what we're talking about here. Emotional availability in terms of like, how do they deal with their trauma? How do they deal with their emotions? Do they deal with their emotions? Do they have emotions? These are important questions you need to know. And then the last score out of 10 is their overall husband material. What are the vibes? Do I think they'd be a good husband? Could we have a healthy discussion together? Would they make me pancakes in the morning? Would they get me flowers? Would they be a friend to me? Really important things we have to nail down with these characters. So like I said, pure, objective, scientific system. Let's go. So first up we have Arno Dorian. Now, I am not partial to a French man, but Arno does something for me. He's messy, he's charismatic, he's a little bit of a cheeky chap, he's very dramatic, he's very theatrical, but I wouldn't say he's overly theatrical. He gives me very like life would be fun with him. However, if it did get to a serious stage, I'd then worry because he feels a little intense at points, you know? Sorry, I've just like in my head, I'm just like going around Paris with Arno hand in hand, don't mind me.
Blah, blah, blah. Proper name, place name, backstory stuff.
Beautiful. Lovely hair. Lovely hair. Sorry, just came back to me. So personality. Witty, charming. I feel like he's very humorous, actually. I'm remembering it now. I haven't played Unity in a while, but from what I remember, he's just got a bit of wit to him. He's very like... He makes a joke out of quite a lot, doesn't he? I feel like he has the classic Assassin's Creed charisma, which obviously a lot of characters have. Of course, Ubisoft want to make likable characters that you kind of resonate with, but I equally feel like there's a level of chaos to him. He has little moments where you wouldn't know that him and Edward Kenway are separate people. There's just like moments where he does things and you're like, why did you do that? Like, what possessed you? What possessed you to do that, Arno? And in a way, I think that makes him seem a little bit childlike, a little bit juvenile, because like you're a grown man. I personally think that might be because his childhood got stolen from him, but we're going to talk about that later. That's in the trauma section. I would say quite caring, but there's just a level of like chaos and almost immaturity about him. I can smell cake. I'm home alone and I can smell cake cooking, and I don't know if I'm having a stroke right now. Anyway, so I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for personality. Yeah, a 7. 7 feels right. Let's move on to combat ability. So, from what I remember, again, I haven't played this game in a while, so my research is a little shoddy here, and I will hold my hands up. But I feel like he was good. Like, obviously, I feel like he's an assassin. He's got to be good at combat to some extent, right? But I don't remember him being the best. When I think of good fighters in Assassin's Creed, Arno doesn't come to mind like at the top. And part of me's thinking is that because like he was just so chaotic. I remember running away a lot, but maybe I'm remembering him wrong. Maybe I'm doing him a disservice right now. But I don't think, again, from my memory, from my headcanon, that he is on the level that we previously put Altair and Ezio on, which was like a 9, almost a 10. He's capable, he's definitely capable. I'm going to give him a 7, and I don't know if that's brutal. I think his general chaos energy means that in the thick of it, he probably wouldn't be able to protect me as well as someone else a little bit more composed. Yes, he would protect me eventually. He just might knock over a couple chairs, a food stand, probably punch the wrong man before I'm saved, you know? And now we move on to emotional availability. And honestly, I wish we didn't, because that man is going through it. I wouldn't even necessarily say he's going through it more than other characters, because as we established last time, they have some deep trauma. I genuinely think that Arno might have. I was going to say the most tragic story, but I don't think it is the most tragic. I think it's the story that is saddest because you actually don't have any kind of happy ending at the end. It's just tragic all the way through. And I'll be honest, it almost feels like there's not much growth that happens for Arno either. His dad gets assassinated by someone we're going to talk about later on, but we're not going to get into that right now. Of course, he's then left without a father. Arno also has to watch his dad publicly die, which is obviously very trauma inducing as a child. But then his kind of replacement father figure, the person that raises him, is the Templar Grand Master, which he obviously doesn't know until later on. So he kind of grows up in this lie, never really knowing who his dad is and who the man who raises him is, and that whole kind of assassin Templar trauma. His whole identity is just a bit of a lie. But then on top of this, he grows up with his best friend and falls in love with his best friend Elise, who is the Grand Templar's daughter. Again, at this point, he doesn't know she's a Templar. We find that out later. We're then going to skip a whole part, but he basically then gets blamed for a murder. He gets sent to prison for a murder he didn't commit. He then meets a man in the prison who turns out to be an assassin, and he joins the Assassin Brotherhood. But he doesn't really join them because he believes in their ideology. He joins them purely because he wants to get revenge. Like, his heart's not in it. He's not there for the same reasons they are. He spends a lot of time making excuses for Elise, who he now finds out is a Templar, because he still loves her. He doesn't want to kill her. He tries to protect her at every point, and eventually she dies. So essentially, what we have is Arno at the end of a game without his love, without any family, and without the Brotherhood. He's basically left alone. It's not even alone in the way of like Edward Kenway lost everyone, because at least at the end of the game we see that Edward has his family still. Arno is literally alone. Arno has no one. So yeah, I feel like his story is quite a tragic one because he doesn't show much growth, unfortunately. He spends his entirety of the life that we see in the game chasing after his love interest Elise, not understanding the bigger part he's playing in this kind of like assassin Templar conflict. He doesn't really grow, he doesn't really learn. So based off of all of that, I'm going to give him quite a low score for emotional availability because yeah, that's a lot for one person to go through, but it's also a lot for someone to go through and still not show any growth. I'm going to give him a 2. That man is a walking time bomb. And then lastly, husband material. I think if we sum up everything we've just talked about, he would be a great time, he'd be a fun time, he'd make you laugh. I have no doubt that he would look after you and completely worship the ground that you walk on, because that is obviously what he did for Elise. However, he's in love with another woman, which in the last part would deduct you an immediate point. Secondly, I think his trauma runs so deep and his like lack of willingness to grow that means that any kind of deep conversation, anything that you'd need to kind of work through would be impossible with that man. Everything would be entirely too complicated, and I think for that reason I'm going to have to give him a 4. A 4 out of 10 for husband. Lovely man, but not for me. I don't think it's worth the emotional trauma he would give me to deal with him. Now, I think we're moving on to someone who I don't feel like I know well enough, and I don't think that's because I haven't played his games, because I have. I'm going to be talking about him, but I don't really know who he is. And I don't think any of us really know who he is. And I think Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft did that on purpose. I think, hopefully, his character will still have more to show. Now, if you haven't guessed, we're talking about Basim. We are talking about Basim. Basim. He's a concerning figure, isn't he? I don't know what else to say about him. I don't know how to feel. Like, I liked Basim. In Valhalla, before the kind of plot twist, I liked Basim. I really enjoyed his, like, almost side role in that storyline, obviously before it all became a thing and we found out who he actually was. The thing is, if you haven't played Valhalla and you haven't played Mirage, I don't quite know how to describe Basim's story because it's so convoluted. I'm gonna try. Basim is a tricky one because he's got 2 layers to him, right? There is the version that we see of him in Mirage, and there's a version of him that exists in Valhalla. And they are 2 very different people. The simple way to sum him up is Basim is a man that spends his entire lives searching for answers that he's probably never gonna get, only to realize that his own life has been a bit of a lie and he's been someone else all along. So his story starts, he's a street thief in Baghdad, but he feels like he doesn't belong. He has these visions, he has these nightmares. He can't quite work out why he's different from other people and why he doesn't feel like himself. He joins the assassins and then slowly over time realizes there is something wrong. There's some kind of identity crisis he's having. The Basim we know is very confused. He's searching for answers. But what is also happening is he is also reincarnation slash vessel for the god Isu Loki. Loki, as we all know and love, right? Tom Hiddleston, whoever you want to throw out there, that Loki, whatever version of Loki you want to exist, the kind of god of mischief, all of that, is the other half of Basim's identity. He is reincarnated into Basim's being. But we don't find that out right until the end of Mirage. Now, Mirage came out after Valhalla, so the version of Basim that we know first is in Valhalla. You would never ever put these two people together unless you knew what was going on behind the scene. He knows who he is, he knows what he wants, he's actively pursuing his own agenda, which we later find out is a crazy agenda. So the Basim that we're dealing with in Valhalla remembers he's Loki and knows exactly what he's looking for. And to not go into it too much, but essentially his motives are revenge against Odin, is reincarnated into the main character of Valhalla. His motives are very revenge driven and calculated in Valhalla. Two very different men. So at the core of his identity, he's a very mysterious character. He's very calculating. We know his agenda doesn't really align with what we would probably consider moral and good, but equally he's not a villain. He's a very grey area, he's a very grey character. So he feels very different from pretty much every other character we've come across in the Assassin's Creed franchise. And he also exists in the modern day story to this day. Whether they continue that, we're yet to see. But all we know is that Basim slash this god Isu inside of him is let loose in the modern day world. And that's a scary thought. I don't know how we're going to deal with that right now. Basim goes from, I don't really know who I am, I don't know what's going on, to, I know exactly who I am, and I'm about to show you all. And that's worse. That is a lot worse. He's a character. He's one to watch, is what I will say. So let's go on to personality. As I said, he's got a bit of a split personality, so it's going to be hard to rate this one, but we're going to have to think overall. He's got this mysterious, calm, but scary calm vibe about him. But I fear that mysterious element could be a winner. And I know it shouldn't be, but Basim is like the red flag that everyone tells you to not get with, but you get with them anyway. That's who he feels like to me. Because I would trust him, and that's exactly why I shouldn't. Because he's made me feel that way, you know? I'd be one of those people where I'm like, yeah, he wants to kill everyone, but not me. I'm gonna give him a 7 for Oh, that's high. I'm gonna give him a 6 for personality. He's got the calm, mysterious vibe going on, but I know. You know when you just know something's not right? I think you'd feel that with Basim. Combat-wise, he's up there. Basim is a scary figure, not only because he's a very well-trained assassin, but because he basically has a god inside of him, inside of his head, inside of his mind. I think we'd all be silly to believe can't enhance his skills. And he has the memories of that god who obviously knows how to fight because they're a god. I think Basim's a very capable figure, scarily capable. Is that going to be my first 10? I'm going to put him on the same level as our highest rated assassins last time. He's a 9. But I do worry. Imagine putting like him up against an Ezio or a Bayek. I'd be scared. I'd be scared that they might not make it out. Oh, I don't want to think about that. Yeah, I'm giving him a 9. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's very capable. Scarily so. Emotional availability. Who are we talking about? You know what I mean? Let's start there. Who? Are we talking about Loki or are we talking about Basim? And the fact that we even have to ask that means it has to be low. What do you mean I'm dealing with a man with a deep identity crisis that thinks he's a god? Doesn't think. He knows. He knows he's a god. Jail. Off to jail with him. If that was in the modern day world, jail. I was imagining Basim in the modern day world then, and I just got a bit scared. One for emotional awareness. Honestly, he's lucky it's not a 0 because that man needs some help. Someone needs to get him some help. He needs some milk. Husband material. Now, this is where he gets me because Loki's entire agenda is about getting his family back, his wife back. What do you mean a man has gone through thousands of years and inhabited another man's body to get back to me? It's dedication. Oh, no, I can't be acting like this. Here's the issue. I know he's a bad idea, but I know if that man was in love with me, he would go to the ends of the earth to get me back. Crazy. But I kind of like it. I'm just a girl at the end of the day, and if a man wants to inhabit another man's body to get me back after a couple thousand years, then like, who am I to say no? I know he's a bad idea, yet I know I'd still pick him, and that says so much about me. He's getting Doctor Point because he has the love of his life already. I'm gonna give him a 6. I'm gonna give Basim a 6 for husband material, and I want no judgment. I want no judgment. No, you can judge me. I'm judging me right now, so judge me. Just judge me. Go for it. I hate that I love him. Moving on swiftly to probably one of my favourite characters, and that is Alexios. Now, I know that he's technically not canon, and that for Odyssey, Cassandra is actually canon, but I didn't know that until after I had already started with Alexios, and quite frankly, I don't think it would have changed my mind. I've since replayed the game, and every time I pick Alexios because I just love him. Let me also just do another disclaimer that I am an ancient history girly. My degree was in classics, it was ancient history and archaeology. I love ancient Greece, I love ancient Rome, I love ancient Egypt. So when I knew that Assassin's Creed was doing a game set in the Peloponnesian War, the scream I scrumped was heard. It was heard across nations, basically. He's got like a rough aura about him. Like there's no sense of composure and polishedness about Alexios. Alexios isn't an assassin because the assassins do not exist yet. The Brotherhood does not exist. The Templars do not exist. But yeah, Alexios is very like expressive, he's reactive, he's very in the moment. He's very different to these kind of calm, composed assassins we've had previously because he's not an assassin, quite frankly, and he's never going to be. Honestly, he's a lot. I love him. He's that man is not stable in the slightest, but I kind of love him. I do. Quick summary: Alexios was a mercenary in ancient Greece who was basically just trying to get by. He had a lot of bounty hunters on him. He was just living a very reckless life day to day, escaping death barely. And in the game, the storyline is very much about finding his family again. And I think Odyssey was the first game where we had choices that actually affected the ending. So while I say that his storyline is about finding his family, it really depends how you played it. Because if you played it like a crazy person, you got none of his family back. If you get the perfect ending, you get all of his family back. I got the perfect ending because I needed to give that man his family back. Alexios, as a person, very loud, very chaotic. He doesn't really care about his life. He doesn't care about the world. He's just there to have fun. So yeah, quite a lovable character, has a lot of depth. He goes through quite a lot in the games. Like I said, depending on your choices, you lose people. Quite frankly, some of the people you lose, you can't change. And I would like to petition for that because there is a part of Odyssey that absolutely breaks me, but it's fine. My heart doesn't matter. It's cool. I quite like his personality. He's very loud, he's very confident, sometimes overconfident, swears a lot. Love that. I can't be mad at that. I swear a lot also. We've got something in common. And he's just an entertaining figure. Like, he's a bit of a misanthrope in the sense of, like, he doesn't really like the people around him, but in a nice way. It's in a way, like, he would protect those people if anything happened to them. He'd want to protect them. But, like, everyone just seems very grumpy. That just seems that the vibe of that island is that everyone's just a bit like, ugh. I'm going to give him a 7 for personality. Now, combat, right? This could be controversial, but I genuinely think he is going to be the closest to a 10 for me. Now, I don't necessarily want to give him a 10, do I? Yeah, no, fuck it, scratch that. I'm giving him a 10. The more I'm thinking about it, he has all grounds to be a 10. He's a mercenary. That much is known, that's fine. He's also Spartan born, and up until when he obviously loses his family, is trained in Spartan ways. So he's a warrior, he's a mercenary. He's also a soldier in some respects. Like he can fight. Like that man We got out of me and him. We were in the depths. We were in the depths against some of those enemies. He wiped out an entire roster of mercenaries, an entire roster of soldiers, officials, military commanders. That man's scary. Let me tell you, Alexios is a scary man to be up against. And then if we want to take it that extra level, he also has an Isu object as a weapon. Do you know what I mean? No one's standing a chance. And I don't know if that's just the way I played Odyssey, because I played very tank, very heavy attacker. But he just wipes people out. Alexios was a force to be reckoned with. So I think he's going to be our first 10. Yeah, genuinely. I wouldn't want him to go up against any of my faves. My Ezio, my Bayek, my Yusuf. They would all fall like blades of grass, bless them. Love them dearly. They wouldn't stand a chance. Sorry, while we're here, can we just talk about the absolute moment of him and Brasidas coming out of the flaming hut together? It was like they were filming a YouTube video. There's just fire in the background, and these two Spartan warriors just come out, you know what I mean? The wind's ruffling their hair. That's a moment. That's a cultural reset, that felt like to me anyway, personally. No one else noticed it, but me. Anyway, moving on. He's born in Sparta. He has a sibling, which is Cassandra in my case. And his family is basically torn apart. I believe there's a prophecy which means that Cassandra needs to get thrown off a mountain. Don't ask. Long story. And he tries to intervene, and in doing so, he then kills the official who is trying to throw Cassandra off the mountain, runs, gets on a boat, and washes up on the shore of Kefalonia, which is where the game starts, on the small little island. So obviously losing your family in that way, and then growing up in the way that you have to, surrounded by no one that you know and love, it's very trauma-inducing. No one can say otherwise. But then throughout the story, we also lose other people, and this is going to be a spoiler, but unfortunately, much later on in the game, we lose Phoebe, his adopted little sister, and we lose her. And it's a really sad moment. The villain in our story is Cassandra, who didn't die. So we obviously see her as a baby get thrown off a mountain. Plot twist, spoiler alert, she doesn't die. She essentially gets found by the cult and is raised to be their mercenary. So you have to deal with the fact that your sister, number one, wants to kill you, doesn't really care about you, doesn't remember you because she was a baby when she was pushed off a mountain. And yeah, you got to try and bring her back to the light. But what we do see throughout the game is that he is able to form these connections, and even rebuilding with his family. There's a lot of growth that obviously goes on to get everyone there at the end. So emotional availability wise, I'm actually going to rate him quite high because I think he went through a lot, but yeah, we get a nice ending out of it. So I'm going to give him a 6 for emotional availability. I think the only thing I'd worry about is that he'd have quite a lot of abandonment trauma. Bless his little heart. I really think he would. Now, husband material. I feel like Life of Alexios would be very loud, it'd be very chaotic. One day would never be the same. One day you'd be picking him up from the bar because he'd been beating up 7 men to death. The next day he'd get you some flowers. The next day you'd be back at the bar. The next day you might go for a beach day. It would be very unpredictable. Life of Alexios. But that being said, I think he cares and he loves very deeply, and I think he would look after you. He'd just be a bit of a wild one. I'm not sure he's someone you could settle down with. I think maybe if you want kids, rethink your choice in Alexios, because maybe I'm doing that man a discredit, but I just feel like his lifestyle may not lead to a stable one for a family. Husband material, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for husband material. Yeah. Unpredictable, but fun, full of love. Just probably wouldn't have any kind of stability in where you live and what you're doing day to day. Alexios gives me maybe the life that wags and wives and girlfriends of athletes feel. It's like, where am I going to be next? But yeah, great guy, love him a lot, lots of fun. And now we're moving on to an interesting one, which is Shay Patrick Cormac. I'm going to hold my hands up here. I haven't played Rogue. I have watched it. I've watched it multiple times. And I haven't played it. I have not played it. And that is for 2 reasons. Number one, I can't deal with the gameplay of it. It gives me a deep fear to hear the assassins whispering and coming for me. I can't be doing that. It's scary. It's actually terrifying. I've tried to play it multiple times, and every single time I hear those whispers, I'm like, nah, get me out.
Yeah, immediately no. Immediately no.
And then number 2, I have a bit of a moral crisis when it comes to killing assassins. And you could probably think that's very hypocritical coming from an Assassin's Creed fan, where the entire thread is about good and evil, and whether there's like a clear line between those two things, and whether it really is Assassins versus Templars, or are these two groups that want the same thing. I'm aware, I hear it, I know. But there's just a moral compass in me that cannot get on board with killing assassins. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry that I'm better than all of you. I'm joking. I just don't have it in me. It's a personal thing, all right? But I do know the game. I've watched it. I know the story. So we're still going to talk about him. So Shay is an Irish immigrant that is in the American colonies. He also has like a bit of a chaotic recklessness to him. He's not super disciplined, he's quite reckless, but he does get recruited for the assassins, but obviously kind of sticks out a bit like a sore thumb because he's not this perfect assassin that kind of just says yes to everything. He questions a lot. He wants to know why we're doing certain things. He wants to know why this is the right thing to do. He's asking all the right questions. He essentially doesn't want to blindly follow the rules. And if you've played the Assassin's Creed games, you'll know that while the Brotherhood is a lovely ideal and has been a lovely ideal in some periods in history, there are a lot of periods of history where the Brotherhood is incredibly corrupt. Nothing's ever perfect, right? When Bayek and Aya got together to set the Brotherhood up, they obviously wanted it to be a certain way. And over time, as it naturally does, things changed, rules changed, and it also entirely depends on the conflicts that are going on in certain areas of the world. Essentially, Shay is questioning all of that. He's questioning why the American Brotherhood are acting the way they do. He starts to get a bit suspicious and doesn't really fully believe in the cause in the same way that the people around him do. Now, to cut a long story short, he hits a turning point. He is sent to retrieve a piece of Eden. What then happens, it can only be described as like a natural disaster, but of course it's not natural. It's unfortunately committed by this issue object that the assassins and the Templars are fighting over. It triggers a massive earthquake, and essentially the entire cities and all the populations in them are kind of left for dead. And the worst part for Shay is that the assassins knew this would happen and they still went ahead with the plan. And this kind of sets him off on a moral crisis, right? Because he's now at a bit of a crossroads with the assassins saying they want one thing and they want the best thing for humanity, but obviously then knowing and committing thousands to death with their actions. He feels a lot of guilt, he feels a lot of responsibility for what happens, and he actually tries to warn them to not do this ever again. So then what happens is he tries to stop them, he tries to intervene with them doing it again, and that leads to him basically being hunted down by his own Brotherhood. He's no longer doubting them, he's now actively opposing them. Now this is where I start to disagree with Shay's actions, but that's fine. In response to this, he then joins the Templars. Personally, it's not making sense to me, and this is where he loses me. He joins them because he thinks they're the lesser evil to the assassins. So his entire goal after this is to now not only stop his own assassin brotherhood, but just to prevent the assassins in general. He essentially has to hunt his former friends, his former mentors, not because he hates them, not because there's like necessarily anger behind his decisions, but purely because somewhere in his deluded little mind, he thinks this is what's best for the world, is to help the Templars. But very different from other characters we've come across. It's a hard game to experience for me because the whole game is essentially one big betrayal from everyone's points of view. But if you remember earlier on, I said that Arno's father was killed. Yeah, it was this guy. Shay said, "Do you know what? I'm not done with the Americas. Let me come over to France." He said, "One-way ticket to France, please." Personality-wise, I'm iffy on him. He's not necessarily this like charming character. He's more grounded, he's more serious. But I guess there's still this kind of like aura of unpredictability about him. I just don't necessarily think he'd be fun to be around. I think he'd be quite serious all the time. And I don't think that's what I need. I'm going to give him a 5 for personality. Combat. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's an assassin trained assassin hunter. He's killed off so many notable assassins of his time period, which is just quite scary. I think he's gonna have to be a 9. If I was an assassin, I wouldn't want to be living in the time that Shay was alive, quite frankly. No, sorry. Extremely capable, no notes. No notes, not one. Not a single note. Emotional availability and trauma. Now, I morally disagree with him, and I think that puts me in a little bit of a biased situation. Now, I'm not saying my method isn't scientific. No one said that. I just think that was a really stupid, reckless decision from a man that isn't reckless and stupid. Obviously, he has his reasons for doubting the Brotherhood. No one is doubting that. No one is doubting the fact that the Assassin's Brotherhood is crazy. It's going on crazy right now. They're acting out. We're all on his side here. Where he loses me is when he turned to the Templars, the known enemy that is responsible for killing thousands anyway, just on a Friday evening for fun. Because why did you think that that was a lesser evil? But I digress. Emotional trauma, I don't think it's going to be great because obviously he's going through all this betrayal. He's kind of having to think about his worldview and have to reevaluate everything that he thought he knew. He's simply driven by guilt, like heavy responsibility, and betrayal. And I don't feel like any of those three things are a good mix. Him switching sides was not like a moment of evil. It's driven by the fact that he genuinely believes that that's the right thing to do. Personally, I think that's scarier. I'd rather you be driven by hatred at this point. At least I then know who I'm looking at. Obviously, the earthquake, he takes kind of like full responsibility for that and has all of the guilt of all of those deaths on his shoulders. I think emotional availability, he's going to have to be maybe like a 4. I think he's a 4 out of 10 because I think the reason he chose the route that he did and almost convinced himself that that was the better idea is because he had all of this guilt, all of this responsibility, all of this betrayal going on that he's never dealt with properly. He kind of like channeled it into being like, well, the Templars are a better idea. And maybe if he'd have sat with his thoughts for a little while longer, he might have come to the conclusion that maybe neither of these groups are just great groups to be a part of right now. And maybe I should just sit this one out. That would have been the better conclusion to come to, but he's only gone and done it now, a couple hundred years ago. You have to catch him first. Very interesting character, and actually very well loved. I've noticed in the Assassin's Creed kind of like fan base, people love him. People love Shay, so. And now we're moving on to another divisive figure, and that is Haytham Kenway. Now, yes, you're thinking, Kenway, that's a familiar name. Yes. Do you remember when Edward had a child? Yeah, well, he had that child. Yeah, she's all great. I mean, she's dead now, but she was great. He also had a son. Unfortunately, Edward gets killed, and Haytham, his young son, gets taken in by someone who is a Templar. Haytham is Connor's dad. Are we seeing the full, timeline? Granddaddy Edward, Daddy Haytham. Oh, not like that. Stop it. Son Connor. Granddad, dad, son. Do you follow him? Great. Haytham is a figure. So obviously he was raised by a Templar, so it will be no shock to anyone that Haytham is a Templar. Now I'll tell you who it was a shock for. Me. Because I remember playing Assassin's Creed 3 and you start playing as Haytham and you're thinking, oh, this is a fun little chap. Don't really know where this is going, but sure. Seems like a great vibe. He gets the boys together in a pub. I think, yeah, lovely. Little night out. Until they start doing rituals, which sound very much like May the Father of Understanding guide us, which is a Templar initiation ritual. And then I realised that for the last hour of gameplay, I've been playing as a Templar and I feel deeply betrayed. No one could ever make me feel the betrayal that I felt in that moment. I wanted to throw up. I was literally like crying, shitting in the club because what do you mean? I've just been killing people and now you tell me I'm a Templar. It was rough. It was wild. My poor little mind back then couldn't quite fathom what I'd done, what I was responsible for, all the deaths I'd caused. But anyway, let's get into Haytham. I touched on this in part 1. He has a very complicated relationship with Connor, which in the end they kind of both come to a point where they respect each other. We have to kind of remember that about Haytham too, that he also shows a sense of growth later on. He's also the Templar Grand Master in the Americas at this time as well. So I respect him. I admire him. I can't fathom dating him. No. I just started choking at the thought. My body just had a violent natural reaction to the thought of that. Wow, I'm crying. That cough really just came from deep down in my soul. I'm allergic to Templars, clearly. Let's set the scene. Edward comes back, who's obviously an assassin. Haytham is born into a very wealthy family, living a life of luxury. His father's then killed. Edward. R.I.P. And Haytham kind of loses all this sense of stability that he thought he had as a young little boy. His life falls apart. And then he's taken in by Templars and raised by them. He's basically mentored and shaped. His whole worldview is shaped by Templars from that moment on. I think that's something to note here. is that Haytham never chose to be a Templar. He's raised in it. He knows nothing other than Templar ideology because he was too young when Edward died for Edward to teach him anything else. So in his mind, order equals safety and control kind of equals stability. He essentially grows into being a highly skilled Templar and eventually becomes the Grand Master of the Templar Order in the Americas. He is almost the opposite of Edward. He's composed, he's strategic, he's cunning, always like one step ahead of everyone. He thinks things through. He's like very rarely emotional. He's very stoic. Edward was the complete opposite of all of those things. And I just think they're such interesting parallels of characters. He's very similar to Shay in the sense of he's not necessarily power hungry or anything like that. He just believes he's doing the right thing. He doesn't know any way else. But where things get interesting is obviously when he meets his son, Connor, because that makes him start to question certain things. Their dynamic isn't very black and white in the sense of like good versus bad. It's filled with tension. It's filled with like this regret. It probably allows Haytham a little glimpse into a world that isn't so like orderly and isn't so controlled. And likewise for Connor. They both have moments of understanding where they're kind of like, I'm not going to turn my back on my brotherhood or my organization, but I can kind of see the other side. And I think that's what Assassin's Creed 3 does in general. It kind of makes you realize that there is no such thing as good versus bad. They both kind of essentially want the same thing. They just have very, very different ways of going about it. The core of Haytham is he's a very calm, controlled, and calculating man. Personality wise, I would say Haytham is like, you know, when people talk about like the Labrador or the black cat, Haytham is your black cat, but he's very calculated. He's very calm and quiet. He says what needs to be said and nothing more. Very intelligent, actually worryingly so, to the point where he's always going to be about 10 steps ahead of everyone around him. I think I want to give him a 6 for personality, and that's not because I think he has a bad personality. I think that's because his personality probably wouldn't align with what I would want in someone. My concern would be that he's quite controlling. That's a big concern. Now, combat. I'm going to give him a 8. He was raised by a Templar. He's going to be a very highly skilled and capable warrior. But because he hasn't kind of had this assassin's training, I don't quite think he'd be on the same level. But he was overpowered by Connor, and I can't, for that reason, put him as any higher. Emotional availability. No. No. I think Haytham's trauma is so bad and so deep rooted, but he flies under the radar because he's so like emotionally dead inside. But like that is equally as scary as someone that acts out on their emotions. To me personally, you're worrying. You can't tell me that after everything you've been through, that you just don't feel anything. The only time we ever kind of see him show any emotion towards Connor's mum, like the mention of Connor's mum and Connor himself, but it takes so long. I wouldn't say he's had some of the deep trauma that other characters have had, but to lose your dad in a very like violent way and have your whole home and your whole life taken away from you, I can imagine is deeply traumatic. I'm sure we can ask Arno. He went through the same thing. But unfortunately, Haytham, it is your job to unlearn. And I don't feel like he unlearns. I don't feel like he has the capacity for emotion until he meets Connor, at which point he's like 50 something. He's an old enough man to know better. And he has just continued to live in his very stoic, zero emotion worldview and life. And Haytham do better. If you had hope and you thought, oh, well, Haytham would open up to me, no, he won't. He won't. I'm just going to pop your little bubble there because he won't. So yeah, it's going to be a 2 for emotional availability. Honestly, I'm even looking at a 1 right now. But I'm going to give him a 2. I'm going to be nice because he does show some sense of care for Connor towards the end. And then lastly, husband material. I value my life and I value my sanity. And for that reason, I would not be seen dead with Haytham Kenway. I just don't think it's going to be any fun. Like, more than anything, I just don't think it's going to be any fun. It's going to be like one of those people that go on holiday and they have a whole itinerary down to the minute. Like, don't get me wrong, I like to know what we're doing in a day. But what do you mean it's 3:01? We should have been here by now. I think he'd be too controlling. I don't need that. I value peace above all else in this life, and Haytham Kenway unfortunately could not give me that. So I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. Sorry, Haytham. Yeah, I think he's a real interesting figure, I do. I just don't think I'd want to be with him. I've just looked at how much space I have on my camera and I have 9 minutes. 9 minutes to talk about Leonardo da Vinci. Jesus. This feels like a quiz round. Wow. Now, I love Leonardo da Vinci as a historical figure, but also in the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. He's a great vibe. He's just I don't know. He's just fun. He's just fun and flamboyant, and I just love him. That's my king right there, my king. Quick disclaimer, I don't think that I would be Leonardo's choice, quite frankly. I think he himself would also rather choose a husband. We're playing fictional here. Now, Leonardo is less husband and more just, I want to be around you. You are a great vibe. I could learn so much shit from you and still walk out of there smiling, giggling, laughing because we've had the greatest of times. Now, I don't think the historical figure of Leonardo da Vinci needs an intro from me, of all people, but as we all know, painter, inventor, everythinker, he did a lot. He's a great man. Changed a lot for us in history. Love him. In the Assassin's Creed world, he is almost a bit of a sidekick to Ezio. He's not an assassin, he's not a Templar, but what he and the other allies of the Assassin's Brotherhood want is obviously like freedom for the people and better lives for the people, and that's what Leo wants, so he helps Ezio. He basically becomes Ezio's friend, his support system, and like his engineer, tech genius, and he kind of helps Ezio navigate the world that he's basically been thrust into. Personality for Leo, I think he has a great personality. He's curious, he's really expressive, he's almost a little bit theatrical, he's overly enthusiastic, he's very emotionally open. Leonardo da Vinci is the golden retriever. He's just great, bountiful energy. Love that man. While everyone else is like out killing people, assassinating, stealing, doing whatever they want, he's just here vibing, painting a little, decoding some really important artifacts. He doesn't really know what they are, you know? But somehow, while everything else is going on, what he's doing feels really important. It's a 10 for personality. He's fun, he's creative, he's a little bit chaotic, he's very enthusiastic, but he'd be a great vibe to be around. So now we get onto combat ability. Respectfully, no. Leo, I love you, but you can protect me against a fly. He could do nothing. Absolutely nothing. What's he gonna do? 2 out of 10 for combat ability. He would try. He would die trying, but he would try. Emotional availability. Now, I'm going to give him a strong 8, simply because he seems very emotionally expressive when Ezio is really struggling to like open up about certain things and deal with certain things. He's like his shoulder to cry on and like the person that helps him understand the world and what's going on. So I think emotional availability wise, he could be an 8 easily. We don't know that he has other trauma, but if he does, he doesn't show it. And then overall husband material, I'm going to give him a 7, right? Because number 1, it would be a lavender marriage. Number 2, it would just feel safe and joyful. And every day it would be a new thing, but not in like a necessarily bad, unpredictable way. He would just find new ways to make you happy. It'd be like, what's that animal? Is it a penguin where they like bring their partner new pebbles to like try and impress them every day? That's what I feel like Leo would be. Absolute sweetheart. So yeah, I'm going to give him a 7 for husband material. And that is the end. So yeah, we've learnt a lot today, and mainly it's that my choice in men has not got any better since part 1. My taste in fictional men is questionable at best, concerning at worst. And then the one stable, happy option I do have probably wouldn't even swing my way. So traumatic for me. Maybe I need to do a deep dive on myself at this point. That being said, I do stand by my rankings. I will not be taking them back, even the ones that are clearly very bad decisions. Basim, we're looking at you. Everyone in this room is looking at you right now, me included. But I did notice this in part 1 that the Assassin's Creed franchise gives us men that are very deeply traumatized in so many different ways, and then just thrusts them upon you and says, but you'll love them anyway. And it does that well because we all fall for it every single time. But yeah, I stand by my rankings. If you disagree with any of them, you're probably right. Do let me know in the comments which ones you disagree with, because I need to know if we're all making bad decisions or if it's just me. So please do let me know if there's people you disagree with, or anyone I've missed, or anyone you'd rank differently. I need to know. I've got to know. But also let me know if there's anyone else that you would like me to do a deep dive little commentary on, because I would love it. I find it so fun. I genuinely find it so fun talking about the Assassin's Creed franchise in general. So you never know, there might be a part 3 on the horizon at some point if we can think of some more. I would also love to do other franchises. I've had some suggestions of Lord of the Rings, I've had suggestions of Resident Evil. I can't remember the rest of them, but I'd be more than happy to talk about characters that I would love to date in any franchise. So if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. Anyway, I'm going to go and rethink my life choices now, but all I'm thinking about is the fact that I would let Basim literally ruined my life. So, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one, which who knows what we're going to be chatting about, but